Hi, my name is Chong Choe-Smith, and in this video, I want to apply a Locke egalitarian framework to the treatment of different migrant groups. I'm starting this video in a guest bedroom of my house. In this very room, I've hosted a refugee from the Middle East, an undocumented foster child from El Salvador, and most recently, a humanitarian parolee from the Ukraine. As we look at different migrant groups and their situations, we can ask the question, why do they receive different bundles of rights, including access to some public benefits, but not others? Ukrainian humanitarian parolees under the United States Uniting for Ukraine program are treated like refugees in that they are afforded temporary legal status and some public benefits, but they are not, as of February 2023, given housing and other resettlement services. So the U4U migrants are worse off than other refugees, but they are better off than other Ukrainians who came prior to the U4U program and others who were not granted asylum or humanitarian parole at all, such as asylum seekers from Central America and Muslim-majority countries. I just switched my background. This is a picture that I took in Amman, Jordan in 2009 when I was there to help Iraqi refugees. Recently, the faculty reading group read an article by Robert Huseby on Locke egalitarianism. Under a responsibility-centric version of Locke egalitarianism, a person's level of advantage or disadvantage should correspond to their level of responsibility. If two individuals have the same level of responsibility, they should enjoy the same level of advantage. Otherwise, the inequality amounts to an injustice. When we're speaking of migrants, if a Syrian and Ukrainian both flee their home countries to escape the horrors of war or political persecution, they should experience the same levels of advantage in their receiving countries. But of course, this doesn't happen. Although over 100,000 Ukrainians have been admitted under the U4U program, Syrians were denied entry under a Muslim ban, and many Central American migrants are forced to enter without authorization. This brings me to the work of Niles Holtec, who addresses and rejects two possible justifications for offering asymmetrical rights to different migrant groups, including that it's a consequence of their voluntary choice. Holtec specifically addresses an argument made by Will Kimlicka that those who voluntarily leave their countries waive their rights, and he's most concerned with the rights to cultural accommodation. Receiving countries, according to Kimlicka, should not be blamed for giving migrants a reduced set of rights. Holtec specifically examines the responsibility side of the Locke egalitarian equation and finds that it can be understood in terms of a capacity to make rational decisions and the value of one's option sets, both of which vary. Destitute migrants should not be held responsible for such choices and be given a reduced set of rights because the choices are made, according to Holtec, against the background of less valuable options. In other words, if a Central American migrant leaves home to find a safe country because she has to choose between leaving or dire poverty, she doesn't deserve a smaller share of advantages or a reduced set of rights. I tend to agree with Holtec over Kimlicka here. What I would also like to do is sketch out a response to another possible justification for the asymmetry and the bundle of rights afforded to different migrant groups, namely because it's an emergency response to a humanitarian crisis. When we're providing emergency aid, how can we be expected to respond in consistent ways? Imperfect compliance with what we ought to do seems to be what is expected in such circumstances. In my response, I would say that Locke egalitarianism is a theory of distributive justice, and so it makes sense to focus on the distribution of advantages or disadvantages. I think it's too easy to say what works in ideal theory does not work in non-ideal theory, or that there are other pragmatic or political considerations at play. I'm not saying that this is not the case, but I think there's also work to be done on the distribution side of the Locke egalitarian equation. In particular, I would distinguish between concepts such as principles, policies, and the implementation of policy. According to Dworkin, principles are standards based on the requirement of justice. Policies are standards based on a social, political, or economic goal. We can ask whether the asymmetry or varying levels of advantage, not justified by any difference in responsibility, is set by an unjust policy or the result of an imperfect implementation of policy. We can separate policy from its implementation and evaluate the underlying policy. Think of it this way. The State Department may operate based on a set of standards to guide its decisions in such cases, even though it may imperfectly comply with those standards. The question is whether the standards themselves for responding to different migrant groups is right, or do they reflect something unfair or unjust? For instance, holding certain migrants responsible for choices made with a less valuable set of options, or treating them differently for discriminatory reasons. Humanitarian emergencies may result in less than perfect implementation of policies, but the underlying policies are crafted over time and should aim for greater equality in the distribution of rights or opportunities for welfare. That's the end of my video. Thanks for watching.